Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches.
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
The players.
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, baby.
The recruits.
Show some passion and some heart.
And those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the SEC.
All those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU talk.
What a privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and hosts Todd Horn, Jeff Palermo, and Glenn Guilbeau.
You're players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
And the Super Chevy Dealer Studio is on the road for this Tuesday as it is regional weekend involving the LSU baseball team. And, man, we got a lot to talk about when it comes to LSU baseball. Also, SEC spring meetings are underway in Destin, Florida. We'll get into that. I'm Jeff Palermo along with Tiger Rag editor Todd Horn. Todd, how you doing tonight? Or Tiger Rag executive editor, excuse me.
It's all right. I'm doing good.
That's
good. Ready to talk baseball.
Yeah, we're tonight at the Goodwood Public Library, the main library for the East Baton Rouge Library System. And a little bit later on, we'll have some folks from the library to talk about all the great summer reading programs that will be ongoing over the next few months while the kids are out of school.
There's a lot of people here right now, man.
Yeah, this place is
it's cooking.
A lot of people getting all their books in store, getting all this out of the way because this weekend a lot of people will be glued to the television or their iPad or whatever, however they're going to be watching these games. And our first guest on the Max Home Hotline, and we'll get right to him here to begin the show. That is LSU pitching coach Nate Yeskie joining us here on Tiger Rag Radio. Coach Yeskie, it's a pleasure that you took some time out on a very busy week to talk with us about LSU's pitchers. How you doing tonight?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, just how exciting is this week for the coaching staff? And really how busy is it when you have to break down 3 opponents in a very short amount of time?
Well, it's challenging. Certainly we know who the first opponent will be as far as the second one. And in some cases, you end up playing all 3 teams over the course of the weekend. So we try to take one step at a time and prepare as best as we can for the opener and then just move as the pieces move on the board. So we kind of like the setup of what we got, and we're going to try to structure it in a way that gives us the best chance to get through the weekend in the best possible way.
Coach, this is Todd. Jay said yesterday, I believe it was, I'm losing track of days here, everything's so combined and accumulating together, but that you guys wouldn't decide on a starter until Friday, or wouldn't announce one until Friday. But having said that, why was it so important in the SEC tournament for you especially to get Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson, your number 1 and number 2 starters, and arguably the 2 best pitchers in the country, some time last Friday?
Well, I think it was the way in which we did it. I think that we didn't overextend either of them. They both logged a pretty hefty workload, as most starters do in college baseball and certainly in our league. And it was a chance to make sure that they were competitive, give us the best chance to win with a 1-2 punch, and kind of maybe give them a little bit of a breather before we get into this playoff push. And we felt like if they did what they did, then that would create opportunity for guys like Shores and Myers who have not pitched in that environment before in the conference tournament. And we were hoping to obviously extend that another game for obvious reasons, but also to get some of the other guys, the 4 freshmen, Evans, Schmidt, Rizzi, Williams, get them a chance to get in there and experience that as well. So there was an all-encompassing look to it that we felt like if we approached it in that way with those 2 guys, we could kind of get them to get out there, try to stay sharp, not overextend them, and then get some other guys some opportunities. And I think we accomplished most of those things. Obviously, we would have liked to add more for those other guys that didn't get a chance to get out there and experience it. But and I think it also solidified us in a spot to where we were a national seed, and we played pretty well from the front end of the conference play till the back end. So lots of things that we had to take into account, and there's always lots of moving pieces. So it was good for them. It was good for our team, and I think it sets us up well that if we choose to use one of those two in the opener, that they're kind of on a regular throwing schedule.
How did Cade Anderson go from a freshman season where he was good, but he wasn't great, and he was more of a midweek pitcher and more of a reliever, to a dominating starter like he is right now?
Well, I think when you look at what college athletics are nowadays, you're dealing in some cases with the back end of your roster being 23, 24-year-old, and in some cases I've seen a 25-year-old on a roster. At that age, I was in AA, and when I was 18, I was coming out of high school. So never mind the physical jumps that you make, but the mental and emotional jumps. And for a guy like Cade at 18, he wasn't ready. I mean, look at the history of our league in the last 5 to 6, maybe 7 years. There aren't a lot of freshmen that are jumping into rotations and logging a ton of innings, because the guy who you faced at that really good high school program that was hitting in the 3-hole, he might be hitting in the 8-hole, or a platoon guy in say the 6 or 7-hole. And it's just different. It's just different to having to navigate a lineup and understanding what guys are doing. And some of these hitters, they've seen your stuff. They've got a pretty good understanding on how you're trying to get them out. So it's developing your arsenal. It's developing your awareness. It's being, I think, kind of aware of what was going on with him coming out of high school with an injury, that you can't ask somebody after that to log a ton of innings. It usually does not bode well for guys that do that. So we gave him a workload that we felt like was going to be challenging, and positioned himself well for moving into this season. And then I would say that he took the ball and ran with the rest of it. He was always sitting next to somebody that was doing the chart if he wasn't doing it himself. He was always watching bullpens. He was always asking questions and looking for every advantage that he could possibly gain, with the idea that I want to pitch on Fridays next year. And that's kind of rubbed off on some of our younger guys. It certainly rubbed off on Anthony Ianson, who has a similar approach and desire to be great. And so I think when you give them some freedom in that environment to do those things, and you surround those kids with other kids that are like them and have that passion to want to compete and get better in the process, those guys, they tend to find their way to the top. So, no surprise seeing his ability, but I think what people don't see is this work ethic, this passion. I mean, he checks off the boxes as well as anybody when you want to go down the list of how would you build a pitcher. Never mind the physical ability, everything else that comes with that, he's at the top of the list.
So when it comes to building a pitcher and envisioning what he was capable of this year, has he exceeded your expectations this year?
I think so. I mean, you never want to put too many big picture expectations. You hope that they stay healthy, that they can make it to post and go wire to wire from the beginning of the year in the rotation to the back end. But when you are going out there on Fridays, there's a bit of an unknown. You're still film will tell you one thing, and you get some ideas on the reports and scouts and people that you talk to with how you want to approach certain teams. But then there's the litmus test of going through it. And some guys are going to make adjustments, and will certain players make them? Will others not? And you have to be able to navigate your way through that in maybe a more uncomfortable fashion that, say, the Sunday guy, he goes out there with a better understanding of this is how you can get this guy out. And he may not have the arsenal, but he has a better understanding of what it is that he's going to battle with and how he's going to get those guys. So for Cade, I think he's exceeded some people's expectations just because of him being a sophomore and not logging a lot of innings last year. But I would tell you that if you truly know the young man, I think he's going to continue to surprise people in a good way with what is out ahead of him with regards to his baseball career.
Could in your mind, are Cade and Anthony the two best pitchers in the country right now?
I would be hard-pressed to see somebody that's going to there may be others that it would be an argument to be as good as them. I'd be shocked if there was anybody better than them, simply because of all the elements that they bring to the table. And, there's a lot of trust. And Anthony came in here as a transfer. He trusted that we were going to put a plan together, have that ready to go so that he could accelerate his game. And I think he's done that. And when you look at what those guys do on a consistent basis, I've talked to coaches after games. I've seen the look on their face in the other dugout. I've seen the look on hitters' faces going back to the dugout. It's uncomfortable. It's a long time. And I think there was even one guy in the conference that I said, "Hey, what was the plan?" And he said, "We were just trying to hang in there as best as we could." And that's really a compliment to somebody when they have the ability that those guys do to say, we really don't have a plan. Our plan is to just basically not let them drown us and bury us in the count or anything like that. So, again, I can't say enough good things about those guys. They care deeply about this program. They care deeply about one another and their teammates. And I think that's a thing that's lost in this day and age, where when you see players that care more about others than they care about themselves, it speaks to their comfort level of what they need to do to get better, but they want to impact the team, and they both desperately want to leave their mark on this program just because, it means so much to them, especially Cade being an in-state kid and Anthony being a guy who knows that he doesn't get the luxury to go at it for 3 years or 4 years like some players do.
Just a couple more minutes here with LSU pitching coach Nate Yeskie on the Max Holmes hotline. Coach Yeskie, has Chase Shores found a home in the bullpen?
Yeah, and, some of that was, we knew there was going to be some growing pains. People read articles and they see what this guy possesses physically, but there's still an experience factor. People forget that Cade Anderson had twice as many college innings at the start of this year than Chase Shores did. And when people start to put some things into perspective like that, they go, oh, well, I guess I didn't take that into consideration. So for Shores to chop up the innings that he did early on in the season and go through some of those difficult growing pains, I think it paid dividends for him to be able to position himself as best as he could and continue to refine his arsenal, which now probably suits him best in the role that he's in. And, he very well may stay in that role till the end of his days, at the big league level. But for him, it was seeing that he was okay, because that's the other thing. Coming off of an injury, there's always that shadow looming in the back of your mind. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be able to get through this? And now I think he's starting to really kind of grow into what he envisioned for himself, what people may have envisioned him from an ability standpoint to be able to do. And, it's fun seeing kids grow that way. And he's put a lot of hard work in. There's been a lot of people from physical trainers, our athletic trainers, the guys that are in the weight room and training room that are helping him move along, that those guys together, I think, have helped give him the freedom to just go out and play and be aggressive. And, to his credit, he's done it. And I think that he's rubbing off on the Jacob Myers of the world and William Schmitz and guys like that, Maverick Rizzi, Kason Evans, and Zach Cowan. So there's a lot of good pieces down there. And the old adage of iron sharpening iron, I think that's what they're doing.
Got about 30 seconds here, Coach. How beneficial was it for Zach Cowan and Kason Evans not to pitch in the SEC tournament, for those two guys in particular?
Well, again, you're looking at guys who have logged a lot of, I would say, high-impact innings where there's some high stress involved. And so anytime that you can kind of take a breather before you make that real push, you got the preseason, you got your conference play, and then you got the postseason. So we're in the third part of our season, and for them to be fresh and ready to go is vitally important. And we would like to see them pitch, but it's also good that they might have had a chance to take a breather too.
Coach, you get a breather too, get a good night's sleep, and good luck this weekend.
Sounds good. Go Tigers.
That's LSU pitching coach Nate Yeskie. We'll get you a scouting report on the 2 seed in the Baton Rouge Regional, Dallas Baptist, when we come back on Tiger Rag Radio from the mobile Super Chevy dealer studio.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Trax.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV.
Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your Super Chevy dealers today.
Now, back to Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, we're going to jump right back to the Max Home Hotline, and joining us now is Reagan Rackcliffe, who is the Sports Information Director for Dallas Baptist Baseball. He's also the voice of the Patriots. He joins us here. Reagan, thanks a lot for spending some time with us as we are at the Goodwood Public Library here in East Baton Rouge. Jeff Palermo along with Todd Horn. How you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for spending a few minutes with us. What's the strongest quality of this Dallas Baptist team? I had the pleasure of calling that game in Arlington when LSU and Dallas Baptist played in February, and the thing that jumped out to me was just the experience, especially around the infield and at a catcher. Is that pretty much held true for the entire season, or has other great qualities of this team emerged as it went on to win 40 games this year?
And I think you're right in saying that. I mean, it's a veteran team. There's a lot of talent, particularly in the infield. Kind of centers around Grant Jay, our catcher that's a junior, that's one of the semifinalists, I think, in the Buster Posey Award. Nate Humphreys is one of the, I think, let's say probably one of the top center fielders in the country as a senior. But I think, to me, what's really been surprising is as talented and as veteran as those position players are, I think what's really become the strength of the team in the second half has been the starting rotation. We've got some guys that have gotten healthy, and that, I think, over the last 3 or 4 weeks, last month of the season, that's truly been what's become the strength of this team. And I think 4 quality arms that could start, which is huge, especially as it gets to be tournament time.
Who's your top starter right now, speaking of the pitching?
Yeah, so Ryan Borberg has become the quote-unquote Friday night ace. He took over Micah Bucknam, who had been at LSU. Micah had been our Friday night guy, and then back when we were in Louisiana just over a month ago, had to come out with an injury, and Ryan just kept moving up in the rotation. He had won 7 straight starts. I want to say 5 or 6 of those were quality starts. And what's worked for him is, I mean, he's a guy that's probably about between 93 to 94, 95 maybe with the fastball, but his splitter's been his best pitch, and he's fun to watch. You know, he's a guy that kind of pitches to contact, low pitch count, kind of efficient on the mound. But he's become the guy that's kind of been the workhorse of the staff. And then behind him, Micah Bucknam just got back last week. Him along with James Ellwanger, then another guy named Mason Peters, who they moved from a closer role into the rotation, has kind of rounded that 4-man group out.
How do you think the team feels about landing in the Baton Rouge Regional, having to face LSU again? Is that an advantage that you played them earlier this season, or is it a disadvantage in their eyes? How do they see it?
Yeah, I think, one, excitement. You know, anytime you get to this time of year, you can't pick and choose where you're going. You know, obviously a ton of respect for LSU, and obviously one of the most storied programs in college baseball. But I think for them, it's a new place too. You know, for a lot of times when we're playing regionals here in Fort Worth against TCU, we've traveled to Arkansas, to Texas, and I know for me, and having been a part of the program for 14 seasons, I mean, to see Baton Rouge and LSU come across the screen, there's a lot of excitement to be able to go there. But they know that it's a tall task. I mean, you're walking into, one of the top environments, if not the top environment in college baseball. So a lot of respect. I think this team is really excited to get there this week.
Don't think that Dallas Baptist is going to be intimidated, given the fact that not only did they win 40 games, that they made it out of a regional last year, and that they're used to playing Texas, Oklahoma, and LSU, as well as other SEC schools. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. And that starts with our head coach, Stan Hefter, and just scheduling. And I think that's also one of the benefits to playing baseball in this part of the country is, you're going to see some of the best week in, week out, particularly for us as a mid-major in the midweeks. And we can play, the likes of, for us, it was the first time to play LSU on in a game on a midweek, but Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, TCU, those are regulars. But, I think for Coach Hefner, one thing that they've always been preaching throughout the season, really particularly the second half of the season, is postseason baseball, and playing at that level against that kind of competition. And so I think that's been the mindset is, hey, we're not doing anything different at this time of year than we've been doing for the last, 2 months of the season. They've really had that mindset of we're playing postseason baseball now. And so when you get to this time of year, it's not changing anything that we've been doing, and just continue that mindset going forward.
Reagan, about a minute left here, and then we'll let you go. What impresses me when I take a look at you guys offensively, 97 home runs and 104 stolen bases. That's pretty impressive when you can get both of those categories near the 100 mark. Talk about how how this offense can be speed burners on the base pass, but also can hit with some pop.
Yeah, absolutely. Under Dan Hefner, I think we've got one of the best hitting coaches in the country. They want to drive the baseball, but Cliff Pennington, who's come in as an assistant coach, has really stressed the run game, and that's been a mark, I think, over the last 3 or 4 years is putting pressure on the bases. So his team's got a chance to be the second team in program history to have 100 home runs, still 100 bags. So an exciting thing to watch on the offensive end for sure.
Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to a Saturday night matchup possibly between LSU and Dallas Baptist. Thanks a lot, Reagan. Enjoy the trip to Baton Rouge, and have a good weekend, man.
Should be great, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
That's Reagan Rackcliffe with Dallas Baptist. He's the play-by-play guy and the sports information director. Joe Healy from D1 Baseball joins us when we come back on Tiger Rag Radio from the Mobile Super Chevy Dealer Studio.
May programs are blooming at your neighborhood East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Introduce the kids to Shakespeare. Celebrate local authors at Author Row. And honor the brave men and women of the armed services with a Memorial Day concert. All happening at your local library. Visit ebrpl.com for details. That's ebrpl.com.
How you doing? This is Snoop Dogg.
Tiger Rag Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are tuned in.
Talk LSU sports, interviews, opinions, and your calls around the Tiger Nation.
Baton Rouge was a life for me. Home with LSU Tigers.
Now more Tiger Rag Radio.
Hey, we love to score and get highlights and championships and play to win.
Tiger Rag Radio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio from the Mobile Super Chevy Dealer Studio as we are at the Goodwood Public Library, the main library for the East Baton Rouge Library System. We will have coming up on the next segment, Lauren Tomlin will join us to talk about some of the summer reading programs that they'll have. Actually, it'll be a couple segments from now, talking about the summer reading program for kids. So looking forward to that. But let's go back to the Max Homes hotline. We've been hot and heavy over there with a couple of great guests already. Nate Yeskie led off the show, LSU pitching coach, and now we bring in Joe Healy from D1 Baseball. Joe, thanks a lot for taking some time out to speak with us here tonight. First of all, have you been able to take a deep breath since the bracket was unveiled yesterday?
Not much of one, but a little bit. It's just different, right? It's conference tournament week. You're at the ballpark all day, and that's going on. So this has been a little bit different. I've been at home writing, but it's still been pretty busy. But it's the best time of year. We wouldn't be in this business if we didn't love this part of it.
So how do you rate this Baton Rouge Regional? Little Rock could be deceiving because of their record, but they actually do have they got a good Friday night pitcher, and they got some talented position players that were banged up for most of the season. I don't really know much about Rhode Island. I got to admit on that one. And then Dallas Baptist, that's a strong 2 seed that's coming to Baton Rouge. How do you look at it?
Yeah, I think that's all fair, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's actually a reasonably good draw for LSU if you consider that this, to me, and J.R. Teague said this in the teleconference yesterday after the field was revealed, that it's about as balanced a field as I think we've had, at least as long as I've been doing this. I agree with his assessment. It feels very balanced. There's no regionals that look like, goodness gracious, how, who did they make mad that's their draw? And on the other side, I don't think there's any walkover regionals. That said, I do feel pretty good about LSU's draw when you consider that Rhode Island is a very good team. They've had a great year. But their metrics, like their RPI, are probably a little bit higher than what they really, how good it's better than what they really are, right? So they're probably a team that should be a 4, but their RPI is reasonably high because they collected some big wins. They beat Oregon earlier this season. That bumped their RPI to where they're a 3 rather than a 4. And then you're right about Little Rock. Like the record is a little bit deceiving. They do have some front end talent, but certainly that was a rebuilding team that made a Cinderella run through the OVC tournament. And Dallas Baptist, you're right. Like that's what it comes down to is, you're probably going to end up in a regional final against DBU. From LSU standpoint, that's you're going to want to win, assuming it goes this way. You're going to want to win that regional final in the first game, because as the pitching gets thinner on both sides, it's DBU team that can really, really hit. So they're going to be okay playing a 12-10 game if that's what you end up having to do, and that's a lot more likely in the second regional final game if they can force it. So it goes without saying, but with this particular draw in particular, it seems like LSU would do well to go 3-0, get it over with. Don't let DBU be able to win games the way it wants to win games.
So, Joe, who do you think Jay Johnson starts on Friday night or Friday afternoon in the first game?
I think given his history, I think it's probably going to just be Cade Anderson. He's kind of a traditionalist, likes to keep things everything the same as much as he can. I go back to the regional 2 years ago when Tulane came in with a record something like 14-40 and just got hot in the conference tournament, and he still threw Paul Skeens in game 1. And if you weren't going to hold back Paul Skeens for a game against the Green Wave, and I get it. Look, that's a rivalry, so Tulane was a little up. I get all that, but still, if somebody else wasn't going to be able to beat Tulane, you had bigger problems. And so, given that, I think it's pretty safe to assume we're going to see Cade Anderson. But I've been surprised before. Jay tends to be a traditionalist in terms of the way he likes to line things up.
When you look at the Baton Rouge Regional being paired with the Clemson Regional, how does that fare in your mind?
Yeah, I think it's dangerous from the standpoint of Clemson's a team that with the way they play tends to do reasonably well on the road. They don't mind going on the road. They're an athletic team. They play defense well. They run the bases. They're not the type of team like they use Georgia, for example, in the SEC. Play great at home. On the road, that offense doesn't travel. Then there are other teams like that. Clemson's not really like that. The way they play travels wherever they go. Every team plays better at home. I get that, but Clemson's a team that really can travel there. I think the other thing that makes it dangerous is, if West Virginia wins that regional, I think they're good enough to give LSU a good series of the box. And, obviously we all know what Kentucky's about. This is not a Kentucky team that's as good as the one that went to the College World Series last year, obviously. But given that it's an SEC team that knows what that looks like, they played a lot of close games this year, Kentucky would go to Alec Box and feel like, hey, this is going to be a difficult weekend, but we know we can play with these guys. And so there are 3 teams in the Clemson Regional, I think, that could go to the box and not necessarily beat LSU, but at least make it interesting. So that's a tough one to be drawn up against for LSU with Clemson, WVU, and Kentucky over there.
Who do you think the committee left out or snubbed? Who got the biggest snub?
Actually they did a pretty good job, but the ones I think that have the biggest gripe are the 2 Big East teams that got left out, UConn and Xavier. And I'm not saying you have to have both of them, but I know at D1, the guys who put together our brackets had a hard time with, okay, Creighton won the automatic bid from the Big East, and then one of UConn or Xavier is going to get in. It was just a matter of trying to figure out which one. And as it turned out, the answer was neither. Both had pretty good RPIs. Both challenged themselves in non-conference. But it just wasn't enough in the committee's eyes. They went with Kentucky instead. And I think that's defensible. Like, I don't think there were any wrong answers with who they put in. And so I think they actually did a really good job. But if I'm UConn and Xavier, the frustrating part is, look, they play in a cold weather climate. They can only schedule who they can schedule. They can't force anyone to, as a mid-major team, scheduling is hard because, you need RPI help because you're not going to get it from your conference. So you got to go schedule hard. And when you schedule hard, as Xavier did and played LSU earlier this season, like, you're going to take some losses. And so it's just a matter of, can you win enough games to get it done? In Xavier's case, they didn't. So they didn't do anything wrong with the schedule. They did everything they could. They just didn't win enough games against those really good teams. And that's tough because Xavier knows, and UConn to some extent, that's their only path to being an at-large team. It's just basically put yourself into the wood chipper and just hope you come out on the other side in one piece. Right. And unfortunately, they just didn't win enough games.
Who got the hardest regional draw?
I think there are a couple. Yeah, I think there are a couple, but the one that I keep coming back to is Oxford with Ole Miss because it's a team that we didn't really have hosting up until really this week, like this past week when they got all the way to the final of the SEC tournament. So maybe a team that maybe they're not as good as what they've played lately. I mean, maybe they are, but they're certainly playing well right now, but we didn't see them that way, just a couple of weeks ago. And then their 2 seed is Georgia Tech, who was the ACC champ, had their own case to host, but didn't. I think there's also a sentimental thing with Georgia Tech. Danny Hall, their longtime coach, is in his last year. He's been there 32 years. So I think there's some element of little extra motivation for Georgia Tech to get him to Omaha. And we know how talented Georgia Tech is. That's a team that I think college baseball fans know is talented. Western Kentucky is probably the best mid-major pitching staff in the entire country as the 3 seed. And the 4 seed, Murray State, I don't think they have enough pitching to be competitive all weekend in this regional, but their offense is good enough that Ole Miss is going to have to throw their ace, Hunter Elliott, in game 1. I think at least they're going to have to throw their ace in game 1 in order to beat Murray State, because Murray State can really, really hit. So it's not necessarily a situation where Ole Miss can look past the 4 seed to a potential matchup with Georgia Tech. They have to take that first game really seriously.
Talking with Joe Healy from D1 Baseball, is there a 2 or 3 seed that you're looking at right now and saying, hey, they got a great shot to win this regional?
I think you have to look at TCU. They were kind of like a host snub. Again, I don't think the committee was wrong to give it to UCLA or Southern Miss, those last couple of hosts. But, TCU is a team I think that because the Big 12 didn't have, some teams that kind of separated themselves, I think TCU was maybe a team that was good enough to host, but just some of the rest of the league dragged them down a little bit. So the numbers just weren't there. And I don't know what to make of Oregon State. So they're in Oregon State's regional. And I don't know what to make of Oregon State. They're very, very talented, but the best games they played this year, I was actually there for. I went to the West Coast and saw them play Oregon, and they went 0-4 against Oregon. And it wasn't like a particularly close 0-4 for the most part. Like, they really got run off the field. So I do think, they play great at home typically, but I do think there's a chance where we watch that regional and TCU shows up there, and we very quickly realize that, actually TCU is the better of the 2 teams here.
How fun will a Tennessee-Arkansas Super Regional Series be, or a Florida-Auburn Super Regional Series, or heck, how about Georgia Tech? What do you think about that?
Yeah, Georgia Tech is the dream, right? It's in Athens. Both of those programs trying to get back to Omaha for the first time in forever. Georgia hasn't been since 2008. Georgia Tech, I don't think, has been since 2006 to Omaha. So there's that. There's the Danny Hall angle. It's a rivalry matchup. All that stuff. But from a quality of the series, I think Arkansas and Tennessee is really, really intriguing. And normally you'd say you really like Arkansas in that series because Tennessee's playing away from home. But Tennessee lost I think it's 4 home series this season. So maybe it'll be better that they'll have to go on the road in that super regional. Right. But certainly, if Tennessee turns it on, they're good enough to beat Arkansas, and Arkansas is a lot of people's national title pick. So I think that would be a lot of fun.
Joe, it should be a lot of fun here. This is what we've all been waiting for, college baseball fans. These next 3 to 4 weeks are always thrilling, drama-filled. We appreciate your time. I know a busy time for you, so thanks again for getting on the phone with us and talking with us. And enjoy what is a great run to Omaha that will begin coming up on Friday.
Yeah, I appreciate it, fellas. Thank you so much.
All right, that is Joe Healy from D1 Baseball. We'll take a break. When we come back, me and Todd here will chat briefly, and then we'll have our first guest from the library. We are broadcasting from the Goodwood Public Library, the main library for the East Baton Rouge Library System, and we'll be back with more from the mobile Super Chevy Dealer Studio. This is Tiger Rag Radio.
Tiger Rag Radio.
The details do matter. Every step, every hand on the ground, every route, everything that we do has a purpose. We are really focused, and our attention to detail is going to be unmatched.
Jeff Palermo back with you on Tiger Rag Radio from the mobile Super Chevy Dealer Studio. We are at the Goodwood Public Library, the main library for the East Baton Rouge Library System, and we'll do a little pinch hitting here, or maybe a switching of the lineup. I said me and Todd would be back coming up after the last segment. In fact, we're going to bring in Lauren Tomlin now from the East Baton Rouge Library System. She is here to talk about the summer reading program from kids, and she's also a big LSU baseball fan, as we were talking during the break. So you're a little nervous about Dallas Baptist.
I am. They were, I'm just a little bit nervous. I mean, they're a really good team. They were really good when we played them that
February.
Tuesday. That Tuesday night. So, but go Tigers. It'll be great.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on at the library during the summer, especially for kids.
Yes.
Tell us about, now that school is out and you want to make sure that if you're a parent out there and you want to make sure your kids stay sharp with their reading skills, how can the East Baton Rouge Public Library help you?
So we are having our summer reading program for kids 0 to 11. Again, this summer, actually summer readings for all ages. Some of my other colleagues will come on later on and talk about the other programs. But for kids 0 to 11, you just sign up with the Beanstack app. You just download it to your phone, or you can go to ebrpl.beanstack.org and sign up. For kids, they have to earn 30 points. So they can earn a point by reading one book, or they can read for 30 minutes and earn 2 points. And once they hit that 30-point mark, they can go to any of the public library and pick up some really cool incentives. We're going to give everybody a free book, and it's a book you get to pick. We get a cool bag and some really awesome coupons from members of the community. I can't think of anybody right now. I just remember the ones from when I was little, McDonald's, but I don't think it's McDonald's. But some cool stuff from around the around the parish. We also are having our summer reading kickoff here at the main library on Thursday. This Thursday, May 29th, is from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We're going to have Tim the Magician at 11 a.m. and then one of our really fun performers, Lady Chops. She does a lot of percussions from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
So how often physically that you actually have to come to the library if you want to be involved in the summer reading program?
Technically, just when you're ready to pick up your prizes.
Yeah.
You can, we want you to come in and check out the books, but you can read books on Libby. So our digital app. So if you're one of those people like me that like to read the books on a tablet, you can browse Libby, use your library card, and check them out that way. But we also have a lot of programs going on around all of our libraries this summer. We've got Harvey Rabbit, again, that's visiting all of our libraries, which is a great puppet show. Charlie the Noise Guy is coming back. He's really fun. I think my favorite always is the Snake ID. It's a local family who teach kids that you can't be afraid of snakes out there. So they'll tell you which ones are maybe stay away from, not necessarily, you don't have to go out there and just, kill every snake you see, but they'll tell you which ones maybe you should stay away from, is the ones you should definitely won't hurt you, and then they bring snakes and you get to hold them. That's the best part.
That's great.
Yeah.
But really, one of the best ways that you can make sure your student or your child stay involved, especially with reading, is getting involved with the East Baton Rouge Public Library system, right?
Yeah, we do. We have we have tons of programs. We have books. We have computers. We have movies. You can just come in and just hang out for a couple of hours. We're just, trying to have a positive space for families and kids to hang out in. And definitely, if you like reading, we're the place to be.
Oh, that's great. Lauren, thanks a lot for spending some time with us. I know this weekend, when you're not working here, you'll be checking out LSU baseball.
Oh, 2 o'clock on Friday, you know where I'll be.
Okay, all right. Well, if you're going to the box, stay cool. It's going to be hot out there. All right, so Lauren Tomlin from the East Baton Rouge Public Library System. Later on, we'll have other library folks here to talk about the summer reading programs for adults and teens, so stay tuned for that. When we come back, me and Todd will be talking about LSU pitching plans here on Tiger Rag Radio from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio from the Glenwood Public Library on Goodwood here in East Baton Rouge Parish. We'll be back after this here on Tiger Rag Radio.
And we're back with Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealer Studio.
Jeff Palermo, along with the executive editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Todd Horn. We are broadcasting from the Glenwood Public Library, the main library for the East Baton Rouge Library System.
Goodwood.
What did I say, Glenwood?
Yeah.
I meant Goodwood. I was thinking of Glenn. That's what it was.
Yeah, I know. You think of Glenn a lot.
I was thinking of Glenn. which he'll be on in the next hour. So can't wait to hear from Glenn. So we're not going to avoid him for the 2 hours here on Tiger Rag Radio. But the question that LSU fans cannot avoid at this point with the regional coming up on Friday, Todd, is who will be the starting pitcher against Little Rock.
So, I love Jay Johnson, and I think Jay Johnson is probably one of the smartest, most analytical, practical baseball coaches in college baseball today. I think he's great. I still don't understand, though, why you would burn one of your two aces against Little Rock when you have a powerhouse hitting team that can attack you multidimensionally, with power hitting and base running, manufacturing runs. It can put you through the hoops, and you're going to need to beat them at least once, maybe twice on the weekend.
You're talking about Dallas Baptist, right?
Dallas Baptist. So why wouldn't you take Jaden Newt like you did against Ole Miss, start him, pitch 2 or 3 innings, then come with Chase Shores, and then go back if you need to Jacob Myers or maybe even Zach Cowan or Kason Evans at that point.
I agree with you 100%. I was floored in 2023, I think like many LSU fans, when he went with Paul Skeens. And it worked out. And, again, part of that was that team was just so dominant. You really couldn't screw it up. I mean, you couldn't. I agree. I would rather save Anthony Ianson and Cade Anderson for Saturday and Sunday. That's how I would do it. Even if Little Rock had all these injuries and now they're coming into the box, they're a hot team, they're ready to go. I don't like burning a pitcher and you end up winning 9-2, and then you might need that guy on Sunday or Monday. Jaden Newt was great against Ole Miss, and he's pitched well, but I don't know if I really want to see him on a Sunday where Dallas Baptist, I'd rather see Ianson or Anderson those 2 games, in one of those games.
I mean, it's very possible that LSU could play 3 games and get out of here 3-0 if they manage that process correctly.
Well, here's something that may the weather could play a role in this. We all know that Jay Johnson studies the weather about as much as he does with batting.
But he can't control the weather. He's let us know that.
He can't control the weather, and he can't have as much control on game times like he did in the Super Regional Series in 2023 because you got 3 other teams involved here, and you're trying to get games in. So they can't sit there and wait till 9 o'clock at night like they did against Kentucky to play a game. We'll continue this thought. I'll tell you what I'm leaning to.
I hear you.
So we'll get to it here right after the top of the hour to break here on Tiger Rag Radio.
Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches,
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
the players,
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, baby.
the recruits,
Show some passion and some heart.
and those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the
All
SEC.
those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU
What
talk.
a privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and hosts Todd Horn, Jeff Palermo, and Glenn Guilbeau.
Players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
And tonight, the Super Chevy Dealer Studio is at the Goodwood Public Library, the main library of the East Baton Rouge Library System. Coming up later on in the hour, we'll talk with a couple more library officials about some of the summer reading programs that they have, one for adults, one for teens. We already heard from Lauren Tomlin, who gave us a great rundown of what's happening for kids as far as summer reading programs. We'll also hear from Glenn Guilbeau, who is at the SEC meetings in Destin, Florida. We'll get his thoughts on the big topics. And, man, there's a lot of big topics that are being discussed at the SEC meeting, so we'll get to that later on in the hour. But me and Todd will continue to talk about the Baton Rouge Regional coming up, and we were just talking about LSU's pitching plans and what they should do. Jay Johnson will not announce a starter until he basically has to. That's 1 hour before game time, when you'll see it on all the social media channels for LSU. They release the lineup. It goes out an hour before game time, so at around 1 o'clock we'll find out who the starting pitcher will be, unless it somehow sneaks out before then, but I don't think that it will. Last time when LSU was in this position, they used Paul Skeens against a very inferior Tulane team. And, they beat the living daylights out of Tulane that day, and they didn't need Paul Skeens.
Just to review that, Tulane had only had 14 wins, had made it into the tournament because they got hot in their conference tournament.
Yeah, AAC conference.
AAC, and won the AAC tournament.
And they almost won it again this year, by the way.
Yeah, I know. And Jay's rationale for taking the best pitcher in college baseball and starting him against arguably the worst team in the tournament that year was, we got to win the first game.
Yeah, and he'll probably look at it this way. We had Joe Healy on from D1 Baseball who says, hey, Jay Johnson is a structured guy. He likes familiarity. He likes routine. Cade Anderson normally starts on Friday. He'll likely start on Friday. Now, one of the things I was talking to you about earlier, if Rice is a team that maybe doesn't
Dallas Baptist.
Why do I keep saying Rice?
Because they're both in Texas.
If Dallas Baptist is a team that doesn't hit lefties very well, he may save Cade Anderson till Saturday. But that means he'll use Anthony Ianson on Friday. I just don't think he's going, as much as I think he should go with someone like Jaden Newt, I just don't think he'll do it. But this is the fly in the ointment, as Tim Brando would say.
Oh, God.
And I hate.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
But to me, this is the fly in the ointment. You know, in the Super Regional Series in 2023, it's just LSU and Kentucky there. They don't have to get in any other games. It's just the best out of three. They had a 2 o'clock start on that Saturday, and because there was a speck of green on the radar, they held the game all the way to 9 o'clock at night. They cannot do that on Friday. And if there is a chance, if let's say at 2 o'clock there is no rain, but there's a good chance at 4:30 or 5, lightning can come into the Baton Rouge area. Maybe Jay Johnson, he looks at the weather and says, you know what, I'm not going to use Anthony Ianson for 4 innings here, or Cade Anderson, and then wait out a 2-hour weather delay and then lose those guys completely. So the weather may play a big role in my mind, Todd.
No, I think that's a great point.
I think that might play and out of the 3 days right now, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, weather looks like, at this moment, as we do this show, Friday looks to be the most iffy day as far as potential for storms, or the rain chances are the highest on Friday as opposed to Saturday and Sunday, and that could play a big factor. And I think at that point, you really are making a huge mistake if you throw Cade Anderson on a Friday knowing at 3:30 the game could be halted because of lightning, and we all know once a game's halted, it's not coming back in a half hour.
Right,
It's an hour, 15, hour and a half, 2 hours.
So that pitcher's burnt.
Yeah.
And I guess the question is, if that were to happen, they, in that scenario that you just painted, and they did start Anderson or Ianson on Friday afternoon, it was halted at 3:30. Lightning forced a delay of 3 hours, and they still have to try to get it in if they can. Does Ianson or Anderson come back later that week?
I mean, there's that chance, there's that chance, but I think you would rather, if you hand the ball off to Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson, you're hoping those guys go 7 innings for you, or at least 6 innings, or somewhere in that. They're throwing 100 pitches for you. That's what you don't want them going out there and throwing 52 and then trying to come back. Now we need them on. I don't know if they would bring them back Sunday night, but on a Monday they certainly probably would at that point when it's win or go home. But I don't see Jay wanting to do that. So I think that plays a huge role here. And as I mentioned at the end of the last hour, there is not a coach, I think, in college baseball that just is sleepless at night wondering about the weather forecast.
And he has a whole team of people who instruct him on what's going on with the radars and the various winds and things like that.
Right.
So what do you think that Dallas Baptist would, they have the second game, and that's a disadvantage no matter how you look at it.
Yeah.
As we established earlier, it's always better to play the first game in the regional. What will their approach be?
I think when you're the 2 or 3 seed, I think you got to use your ace. So if it's Ryan Borberg, then I think that's who they throw. But they do have two other starters that have had success this season. James Ellwanger, who's got 90 strikeouts in 59 innings. That's very impressive. But that also tells you 59 innings in 15 games. He doesn't go very long in games. And then the other one is a name that LSU fans should be very familiar with. That's Micah Buckman, who was their Friday night guy at the beginning of the season, got hurt towards the end of the year, but now is back, and he's had a very good season as well. I mean, it's not great, but it's 6-1, 4.37 ERA. So.
And what was Buckman's injury?
He didn't say. He didn't say what the injury was, but and it looks like he only missed 3 starts, so it wasn't anything too significant.
Could have been a finger blister or something like that.
But speaking of the opposing pitching to LSU's hitting, now LSU's bats look like they'll probably be okay, if not better than okay, these next couple of weeks, as long as LSU advances to the Super Regionals. But the concern level, and we'll have this topic when it gets back to the College World Series about where LSU is offensively once they get back into the big ballpark, away from the box. Can this team, can you count on them to score 5 runs, or do we just got to listen to Jay Johnson say, well, the other pitcher was pretty good?
The other pitchers are pretty good for everybody right now, and everybody else seems to be able to manufacture 4 or 5 runs when they need to in the big games. And it's the situation where they had, 16 innings, 13 innings?
15 innings and just 2 hits to finish out the SEC tournament.
It's crazy.
That's just not good.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to get it done when they need to get it done. Now, like you said, in Alex Box, it's a different story.
Right.
And it's not just because it's a smaller ballpark. It's because it's Alex Box and they're comfortable there.
Yeah.
So how much of it is mental?
Well, I mean, Ethan Fry talked about yesterday about how it's a no-brainer. You would rather be at home than on the road. Nobody likes sleeping in a hotel room, is how Ethan Fry said it. You see the ball better in your home park, or you're more accustomed to seeing it coming out of the pitcher's hand. And one of the things that I talked about at the beginning of the season that was one of my worries about this team, it was just not a lot of guys that have gone through the SEC. And really only had Jared Jones, you had Braswell, who didn't start at the beginning of the season as well. I mean, it took a while before he became the regular starter. You had Jared Jones and you had Chris Stanfield. That's basically it as far as guys that are hitters that have experienced the Southeastern Conference and dealt with this pitching. And I think we saw at times that this team, even though as great as Milam was last year, he has been not as good this year. He's only a 200 hitter. And there's Josh Pearson. I should throw Josh Pearson in there, but he's not even a full-time player.
Right.
So what was made the 2023 team so great was just the experience on that team. From Dylan Cruz to Trey Morgan to Cade Beloso, Joe Bear, Braden Joe Bear. I mean, just
Gavin Dugas.
Gavin, he's a 5-year player.
Right.
This team doesn't have that. So they went through, I think, a lot of growing pains.
What was Jared Jones this weekend in the SEC tournament? 0 for 9?
Oh, I don't know. I know he walked on, and I'll tell you why I know he walked in the game against A&M, because this drove me nuts, Todd. You talked about how you have a lot, and I have a lot of respect for Jay Johnson too. I think the guy's a grinder. He doesn't miss a thing, but you know me. My biggest beef with him, he just overanalyzes things sometimes way too much. And this is what burned me about the Texas A&M game. First guy that gets up there, Derek Curiel, double, boom. exactly what you need, right?
Right.
That's exactly what you need. Double. Jared Jones walks. The pitcher's head is spinning. I just gave up a hit. I just walked Jared Jones. Maybe they pitched around Jared Jones because that's what you kind of do with him anyways. But the pitcher's sitting there thinking, first and second, nobody out. Man, this is tough. And what do? What does Jay do? He bunts. He bunts and gives them a free out. And
with a double-digit home run hitter up.
With a guy who's going to be selected in the top 3 rounds of the Major League Baseball draft.
Right.
It just – and then later on in that game, Todd, 2-1 count to Michael Braswell with Milam at first. Nobody out. And maybe Jay didn't call for this. Maybe Braswell decided to do this himself. Braswell does the fake bunt, pull the bat back, and swing. It's a 2-1 count. Grip it and rip it, dude.
Right.
What do we do? We're not playing in California.
Right. So it's
that just drives me up the wall.
Yeah.
I could see if it's in the 6th inning and you get runners at first and second and it's a 1-1 game and you want to put a bunt down, that's fine. Earlier in the SEC tournament, Ole Miss beat Arkansas 5-2. They scored 5 runs in the first inning. You know what they didn't do in the first inning? They didn't bunt.
Right.
Vanderbilt gets a bunch of crooked numbers against Tennessee early in the game. You know what they didn't do? They didn't bunt. It just drives me. I just kind of wonder as a team what kind of mindset you have. Daniel Dickinson is he's going to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick next month, or I guess in July. I mean, what is that just sending kind of? I don't like it. I don't like it at all, and that's what you're going to see in Omaha in the first inning when they get there. And I don't know. I might turn the TV off.
Okay, one last thing. I know we're running short on time here, but we talked about Milam. Milam's batting 200. He's proven himself. He is not a good hitter. Was last year just a flash in the pan?
Well, I think what's telling is Josh Pearson pinch hit for him. That was your best postseason hitter last year was Milam, and here he is in a big spot in the Ole Miss game, and he gets pulled for Josh Pearson, who I understand has got a lot of skins on the wall, but that tells you right there what the coaching staff thinks right now of Stephen Milam at the plate. That's not good.
Not good.
All right, let's take a break. We'll get back to some library talk here on Tiger Rag Radio as we are broadcasting from the Goodwood Public Library, the main library for the East Baton Rouge Library System. We'll be back after this here on Tiger Rag Radio.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Tracks.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV.
Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your Super Chevy dealers today.
Tiger Rag Radio.
The details do matter. Every step, every hand on the ground, every route, everything that we do has a purpose. We are really focused, and our attention to detail is going to be unmatched.
All right, back here on Tiger Rag Radio, and the Super Chevy Dealer Studio is mobile this week as we are at the Goodwood Public Library, the main library for the East Baton Rouge Library System, and we're here this Tuesday to talk about all the great summer reading programs that the library system offers for those here in East Baton Rouge Parish. And joining us now is Brandon Riley, who handles the summer reading program for adults. Brandon, thanks a lot for being part of the show once again. How you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great, and thanks for having me back. So if you're 18 and over, we've got a wonderful summer reading program for you this summer. This year we have a bingo card that you fill out. You can get entries for a drawing that we're doing at the end of the summer for all these wonderful art books that have been donated to us as prizes. We also have gift cards, things of that nature. All you have to do is take yourself and a library card. If you don't have a library card, just come to the library anyway. We'll give you one. Sign up for summer reading. You read 3 books. You're done. You get a bag. You get, swag. And you can keep participating by reading more and getting more and more drawings for our incentives program, again, at the end of the summer. We also have tons of wonderful programs that we've got set up. At any of the libraries, there's going to be programs where you can go and paint rocks, okay? Who doesn't like painting rocks? We've got a big communal painting session that's going to occur here. about mid-July. We have elementop.art, who's putting on a first-of-its-kind kind of pilot week-long art workshop at the Fairwood Library. That starts the first week of June. We have this wonderful artist that we met recently. Her name is Nikia Johnson, and she sources local clays like from the earth, right? She digs it, and then she's going to show us how her process. She's going to come out here and help people make their own pots and then color them and paint them. Lots and lots of wonderful things like that going on.
Yeah, I think people have to realize that, library isn't just for kids or teens, but adults can continue their learning by visiting their local library.
Absolutely. We're a community organization. We connect people with new experiences, information. Books are the brand for us, but we're here to connect people to new, exciting experiences, and that's what we envisioned for this summer. I almost forgot. We've got two other cool things that I want to talk about. First of all, you can see this beautiful stained glass here that Stephen Wilson installed for us. We made a coloring book and had it printed, so you can have this actual artwork and color it yourself and have a copy of it and read about the story behind it. We're going to make those available soon. They'll be back from the printers pretty soon. The other thing we're doing this summer is this wacky idea. It's called the Lender Challenge. Now, last year, this local family, they love the library. They're the Lenders, Ruth Lender. She decided one day that she was just going to visit every single library in the system all in one day, and she did it. Okay, and we took notice of it. I mean, it's a silly thing, right? So she went to all 14 locations that existed.
14?
Yeah, it's 15 now because South opened. So we've created the Lender Challenge. So you go to a library, you get a map. If you're going to do it all in one day, you have to register with us because we do some fun stuff with you. And we can't do it for everybody because it would just be everybody. But if you're not doing the all in one day, you can do we call it the scenic route, visit every library across the summer, get your map at any library. They'll stamp a passport stamp at every library, and then you present it, you get a certificate and an invitation to an event later in the year. You do what we're calling the heroic act of literacy. You visit all the libraries all in one day. And there's actually a little ceremony we've come up with, and we're going to use our 3D printers to create a special one-of-a-kind medallion for every family that completes that challenge. So we're really excited about that. It's called the Lender Challenge, and we would really love to see a bunch of people participate in that this year.
That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. Getting back to the Adult Summer Reading Pro, so just 3 books in order to be eligible for some sort of prize, right?
Right. But you can read up to 9 more. Every 3 books gives you another drawing in our incentive drawing at the end of the summer.
And I would imagine for this adult summer reading program, you're getting people all the way, from 20 to 80, I would think.
Yeah. Huh? Teen summer reading cuts off at 17.
Okay.
But they do it by grade level. So if you're 18 and still in high school, you can either do summer reading for teens or you can do it for adults. We don't care. You just get to do one or the other, right? But anyone from 18 all the way up to 99 and beyond can participate.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then when we were here earlier, Brandon, I got here early today. You had a nice little farmer's market out here every Tuesday, right?
Oh, yeah. Those are the nice folks from Beretta. They also run the farmer's market downtown every Saturday. They come out here. They have produce. They have bread. They have coffee now. They've added an excellent coffee vendor. You can buy plants. I bought some more tomato plants. Go plant those. I like to do a little gardening,
That's great. Cool. While you're also reading books. Yeah. How many books a year do you read, do you think, Brian?
Oh, I lose count.
Really?
And I also lose count because I'll read something and I'll
175-page book. How long does it take you to get through?
A couple of hours.
Really?
Yeah.
You're a speed reader?
Yeah, my wife is too. My wife will take our Libby app. Libby's wonderful. It's got the ebooks there. It's free if you have a card. Just sign up for it. Sign up for Libby, please. And she'll read 3 or 4 in a day.
Wow.
She just right through them.
I got some catching up to do, man.
There you go.
Brandon, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you.
All right, that's Brandon Riley from the East Baton Rouge Public Library System. Always a pleasure to talk with him. Coming up a little bit later on, we'll hear from Julia Moncada. She'll talk about the summer reading program for teens here with the East Baton Rouge Public Library System. When we come back, Glenn Guilbeau will join us. He's in Destin, Florida for the SEC spring meeting, so stay tuned for that here on Tiger Rag Radio.
May programs are blooming at your neighborhood East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Introduce the kids to Shakespeare. Celebrate local authors at Author Row. And honor the brave men and women of the armed services with a Memorial Day concert. All happening at your local library. Visit ebrpl.com for details. That's ebrpl.com.
Now more Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealer Studio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo, along with the executive editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Todd Horn. We are at the Super Chevy Dealer Studio at the Goodwood. I've been calling it the Glenwood because we miss Glenn Guilbeau so much.
You miss Glenn Guilbeau so much.
But it's the Goodwood Public Library, part of the East Baton Rouge library system. Glenn Guilbeau, the editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, he joins us now on the Max Home Hotline. He's in Destin, Florida. And Glenn, thanks a lot for talking with us. Spring, this SEC meetings, this isn't where you're just kind of hanging out and, drinking a couple of fruity drinks. There are some major.
Actually, it is. Actually, it is, but go ahead.
Well, maybe there's actually some very serious ramifications that can come based on what is decided, or at least maybe not what's decided, or at least
where the SEC wants to position themselves with the rest of this tug of war going on.
And it all really centers around the college football playoff and what that will look like starting in 2026. We all know what it's going to be in 2025. The conference champions no longer are going to get an automatic bid. They're going to go 1 through 12 as far as the 12 teams that make the playoffs, and it'll be seeded 1 through 12, with 1 being the best, 12 being the least accomplished out of the 12 teams, and the top 4 seeds get a bye. But what will an even more expanded college football playoff look like in 2026 when it likely grows to 16 teams? And that's where it kind of all starts. Glenn, what's the feeling that you're getting there since you arrived in Destin, Florida?
Well, you outlined what's on paper, but what I'm getting the feeling of is what they're really doing is Sankey and the SEC is mad that more SEC teams didn't get in last season. They're going to make damn sure they get in next time.
Yeah, right.
That's what I'm getting from this. Even though those teams didn't deserve to go in last year. But, they're talking about a lot of things. But go ahead, Todd.
Well, I was going to say that I just saw Ross Dellinger's article that he had just posted, and he said that the SEC is in favor of, and I want you to confirm this for us based on what you just witnessed today, in favor of 5 automatic qualifiers with 11 at large, because the SEC has averaged having 5 teams finish in the top 16 over the life of the playoffs.
Well, I don't know if that's solid, that's what the league is for. I didn't say that in the meeting, but he may well be. I don't see why he would be against more teams in there, but to me that's kind of ridiculous. You can't just lock in teams. You got to wait and see how good they are, and if the SEC is truly the best league, and it hasn't been the last couple of years, the Big Ten's been better, at least at the top, that you got to earn your way in. So I don't believe in the locked in automatics, whether it's 4 or 5. The SEC most of the time will get, probably the most teams in. They just didn't happen to kind of cancel each other out last year. But in other years, they'll have more in.
Well, will they go to the 9-game SEC schedule if they don't get the qualifying format they want?
Well, they want to go to a 9-game schedule, and they're talking about it. They're talking about a play-in game. They're talking about the SEC title game possibly being part of the play-in game. Yet at the same time, they're still talking about trying to keep some of their rivalries intact, which is going to be difficult. But, they're not going to vote on anything here in Destin. They usually don't. They're going to talk about it and see how the coaches feel, and then they're going to pass it on down the line. There's December 1st, 2025 is the deadline Greg gave today for having everything done for the 26 playoffs, and that's kind of pushing it. So he kind of wants to get it done earlier, before that.
What about the transfer portal? Did they decide, the SEC decide what its position is going to be on the transfer portal moving forward? Will there be multiple portals? What's going to happen?
They don't decide anything here. They talk about a lot of stuff. Okay, I've been doing this thing a long time. They don't decide anything here. They've talked about maybe having a 10-day window in January for the portal. And, you know, that would still be a problem because it would affect the teams that are still in the playoffs, you know, at the end of the playoffs in January, which I think most people, and particularly the coaches, would like to get rid of, you know, not having to be getting their team ready for the playoffs and then, you know, having to look at the freaking portal. So they need to move that, and he didn't seem that adamant about doing that. Sankey seemed a little more interested in the athletes than the coaches in that vein.
Well, from an athlete perspective, if you had it in January, you know, I don't know, say if it's January 15th to the 25th or whatever you decide, that would be very difficult then for that quote-unquote student athlete then to get on campus for the spring and then potentially participate in spring football.
You give them about 3 days.
Now, granted, some of this stuff kind of gets handled pretty quickly, but
it does.
I can understand from the coach's perspective how that makes sense, but you also have to realize the NCAA doesn't win any lawsuits anymore, and all it takes is another student athlete to file a lawsuit, and they're back to where they are now.
What did Shakespeare say? Kill all the lawyers. And even though my brother's a lawyer, but he's a former lawyer, I'd like to qualify that.
So you could preserve his life, right?
Yeah, he made it through. Okay. But, you know, Lane Kiffin made a great point this afternoon. He said all of the portal stuff and all of the NIL stuff since 21, it's been very player-friendly. And he says that that's going to start moving a little bit more to the middle, you know, with some adjustments, because it's a little too player-friendly. They get to do whatever, whenever. And, you know, they need to put some better parameters around that.
Okay, well, speaking of that, what is the situation in their position on the revenue sharing and the house settlement, which is still sitting in a 75-year-old judge's arms right now to decide what's going to happen? Is it going to take place by July 1st, or what are their thoughts?
You know, that question didn't come up much. Lane was asked what he thought the football's portion of the revenue share would be, but he said that was the president's decision. Sankey did not discuss that too much. But again, you know, that's something that's probably going to be in fact, it wasn't even discussed at the meetings today, I would say. They went over a bunch of other things. But, you know, I'm sure that it's kind of out of their hands, I think, as far as what the individual schools can do as far as the deadline when it starts.
So basically the SEC, the conference, is not going to dictate to the schools what the revenue share is going to be. I was just curious if they anticipated it actually happening by July 1st, or if they what they thought.
I think each school is going to dictate that and make up their own mind on that. I don't think you're going to see the SEC telling them, hey, you got to have this for football and this for basketball.
Glenn, I think we hit all the big topics: expanded college football playoff, transfer portal, revenue sharing. What 9 games SEC schedule? What else is there?
What fruity drink did Brian Kelly have?
You know, I haven't seen Brian. Saw Billy Napier.
That's your boy.
Saw Lane. Yeah, Billy's still here. Everybody said he was going to get fired last year. He's still here. In fact, somebody asked him that. You're still here, Billy? He said, yes, I am. But no, it was really cool. I was walking through the lobby and I saw a little huddle of Eli Drinkwitz, Sam Pittman, and Mark Stoops all kind of huddled together there in the lobby. You know, you don't see that at the media days. You know, and that's what's the cool thing about this. It's kind of casual. It's a little more casual than the media days, and you can talk to coaches in a more relaxed environment. And you know, it's worth covering, even though they rarely ever, you know, decide anything here. You know, but the ball starts starting to roll here a little bit.
Glenn, just final question. I think a lot of people are getting are seeing it more and more that eventually here the SEC and the Big Ten could potentially just break off and form their own organization or association, however you want to describe it. I mean, what's your feeling on that, Glenn? I mean, are we getting there, or is Greg Sankey really – because whenever Greg Sankey talks about this topic, he really – I don't want to say he brushes it off, but that almost sounds like the nuclear option. That's the last thing that he would really want to do.
Well, actually, last night on the eve of all this, he had a little press conference, and he said, he talked about how that might be an option to just leave. I've heard people talk about that. He said, while I'd like to explore that, he doesn't know how that might work.
Yeah.
Which is a good point. I mean, how would that work? I mean,
right.
The SEC just play Big Ten teams?
What would a Baton Rouge Regional look like this weekend? Who are you playing? Are you playing Rutgers and Maryland?
What would March Madness look like?
I know. Whenever they start talking about going off and governing themselves, I always get a little nervous because, each league is just going to take care of themselves. That's all they do. I think, as much as Sankey sounds good and talks about the good of college football, I think he's really just taking care of his league. And he's mad he didn't get more teams in the freaking playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And if you want more teams in the playoffs, you got to be good. And you can't lose to Oklahoma at the end of the year like Alabama did. And you can't lose to Florida like LSU did. And you can't lose to USC.
And you can't play 9-game schedules because that would hurt you in the long run. Okay, well, how?
No, because not all the SEC teams are good. See, that's the misconception. You're thinking that all the SEC teams are good. Believe me, there's some rent-a-wins in the SEC. And there's some real average teams in the SEC, like Oklahoma, like Mississippi State, usually Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
LSU was basically average last year, maybe above average. Florida's been average for years. So I don't buy that. Oh, we can't play 9 or 10 games because the SEC is so tough. The SEC is like the other conferences. Most of the time, they're kind of top-heavy, and the other teams are average. Look at Texas A&M. They were average too. They beat LSU, but in the end, they were average.
All right, Glenn, we got to let you go on that. We'll let you get back to your
baseball?
fruity drink.
No baseball?
We don't have time for baseball, man. Next week we'll talk super regionals. We'll talk LSU, Kentucky. That's what Todd's already saying. He said he's got Kentucky coming back for the super regional.
All right. Todd's really good at predictions, as we all know.
All right, Glenn, have fun in Destin, Florida. I guess you can't not have fun in Destin, Florida. All right, when we come back, joining us from the East Baton Rouge Public Library, it's Julie Moncada. She'll talk about the summer reading program for teens, so stay tuned for that here on Tiger Rag Radio from the mobile Super Chevy dealer studio.
You should call that radio station and let him have it.
Good idea. 1-800-673-5555.
I want to be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio from the Goodwood Public Library. The Super Chevy dealer studio is mobile this week. We are at the main library of the East Baton Rouge Library System, and we are here this week to talk about all the great summer reading programs that the East Baton Rouge Library System is offering. And Julia Moncada is in charge of the summer reading for teens program. And there's a lot going on for teens when it comes to summer reading. Julie, thanks a lot for stopping by. Tell us about some of the things that the library is offering for teens to stay involved in books.
Okay. Well, we have the basic summer reading program where you're going to read 3 books and you get essentially an incentive for that.
That's great.
Which is a little bag, some candy, because who doesn't love candy? And there's a couple of other things to choose from. So we have that. You can do that on Beanstack. You can sign up there. You can stop by any branch to sign up for that. And then we have some extra fun things to do over the summer, which is all of our different programs. One of them is Film Camp, which is not yet full, and that's one that everybody really loves. You do have to register for that one. So call the teen department of any branch can register you. But it's a week-long program where they get to put their hands on the film equipment and learn how to make a little film. They storyboard it, and they do the whole thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And so that one is, as you mentioned, there's still some spots open
There's still spots open.
And it's a week-long program.
It's a week-long program, so they have 7 different ones that'll be running in June.
Okay.
So we have them at different branches. I can give you the branches. Main Library, Jones Creek, Bluebonnet, the new South Branch, Greenwell Springs, Zachary, and Delmont Gardens will all have one. It doesn't matter whichever one has a spot. If you want to travel to it, you can sign up there. Like I said, anybody at the front desk of not the front desk, any team desk person can sign you up and tell you, if it's morning or afternoon.
Right.
But there's spots. I just checked it, and there's still technically spots in every single one.
That's
but
cool.
They're filling up for this next week.
Tell us about some of the other programs you have.
All right. We have some escape rooms, which are I know y'all are aware of 13th Gate.
Mm-hmm.
This is more teen-oriented. You're not locked in the room. So if you're feeling claustrophobic, don't worry about it. You can actually walk out the room.
Okay.
But it's a whole bunch of puzzles that you have to solve.
Okay.
And to get into the box and win it. And you do it together with everybody else who shows up. You do have to register for those as well. And they have a couple of them on different themes. One of them is like an art heist.
Mm-hmm.
You have to figure out how to steal the painting, if you will. And another one is like a Hunger Games themed one as well.
All right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, and we have another little challenge with tiny hands.
Okay, tell us about this.
So it's a little tiny hand. If you've seen them probably online, people doing silly things with it, and it fits like a little puppet over just your finger, and you get 2 of them, and they have different challenges, and you compete with everybody else. So if we give you a marker, you have to hold it with the tiny hands and write your name with it. And
cool.
Then we'll give you like a bunch of cups, and you have to stack them.
Yeah.
And different little things that you can do with that. And they have a couple of those programs going on too.
Well, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. As far as the entire parish, any idea how many teens get involved in your reading programs?
I don't have numbers off the top of my head, but I know the number. I don't have the numbers from last year,
obviously
to be honest,
it's a lot of participation, I would imagine, from teenagers because you got to stay involved in books even though school is not in session, right?
Yeah, and so the good thing is you read 3 books to get the prize, but every 3 books you read after that, you get a ticket to enter a drawing, and we do a little weekly drawing for prizes. So the more tickets you have, the more chances you have to win too.
Okay.
So, and we know you have to do your summer reading for school.
Yeah.
Those books count too. This is one we don't mind you double dipping on.
Right. So you can find out all this information, I would imagine, at the East Baton Rouge Public Library website, right?
Yes.
All right.
www.ebrpl.com.
Great.
Yeah.
Julie, thanks a lot for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay. All right. So Julie Moncada from the Summer Reading Program for Teens. We'll take our final break on Tiger Rag Radio. We'll wrap up the show from the Mobile Super Chevy Dealer Studio when we come back.
Tiger Rag Radio is back on the air, live from Super Chevy Dealer Studio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio. Fun show tonight. Always one of my favorite shows of the year, the Tuesday before regionals, looking ahead to what might happen.
I thought it was we get to paint rocks.
We had some good stuff from the library today, from Lauren Tomlin, Brandon Rowley, Julie Moncada. I hope even our listeners statewide, even if you can't get to the East Baton Rouge Public Library system, hopefully you're getting your kids involved in their local library there this summer. But LSU, you don't want the off-season to begin after this weekend, that's for sure. And I don't think it will. But I don't know, Todd. I got this funny feeling, LSU's been, since they've been hosting the regionals, it seems like, anyways, it's been a while since they've been stretched to the if-necessary game on a Monday. And I don't know. Why do I got a funny feeling maybe they get stretched to that this weekend?
I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I don't have a strong feeling either way, which kind of worries me because because I think if you're just looking at and comparing all the regions, all the regionals, the composition of all the regionals, that you have the general take that LSU's got a pretty easy
path to Omaha.
To it. But I don't feel that, and I don't. But I don't also feel the opposite. Like you seem to have a strong pull towards Monday.
Yeah, maybe I could see them being just extended a little bit. They're going to win. I'd be stunned. I mean, if we're back here on Tuesday and they've lost, I'll be almost speechless, or maybe even slightly angry. I don't know, probably both. I think they should be able to. They should win this. It would be a disappointment. It would be a major disappointment if this team didn't get to Omaha because, like Jay Johnson has said, they've been very consistent all season long.
I just think at the end of the day, they have
two great pitchers.
Yep. And they have a strong bullpen.
Yes.
That is consistent. And I think that they will hit the ball well enough in Alex box to probably get out of there before Monday.
Yeah.
But I'm not super strong in that feeling.
Okay.
So, I don't want to make that prediction because Glenn would, hold it over my head for the rest of my life.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the show, man. We had a great guest. Want to thank Nate Yeskie, LSU pitching coach, Joe Healy from D1 Baseball. We also heard from Dallas Baptist. We got a chance to talk with Reagan Rackcliffe, their play-by-play guy in SID. Glenn Guilbeau joined us from Destin. Who else did we have?
Joe Healy.
Joe Healy. I think I did mention Joe. And then all the great folks here from the East Baton Rouge Parish Library System. For Todd Horn, I'm Jeff Palermo. Jackson Blackman back at the studio, at the Super Chevy Dealer Studio. We thank you and follow Tiger Rag for the latest when it comes to NCAA Baseball Regional Talk.
TigerRag.com.
Tiger Rag is everywhere. Online at TigerRag.com. Like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Tiger Rag Magazine or follow us on Twitter at Tiger_Rag.